If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably because a child you love and care for is differently wired. Are they also struggling in their current educational setting, seen only for what they're doing wrong while longing for positive relationships with peers and others? Envision a world where your child's unique abilities are not just recognized, but celebrated. A world where they can connect with others and their true potential is seen and appreciated. The Strength-Based Assessment Lab's mission is to build a world for your child just like that. Through its innovative approach, it aims to empower students, families, educators, and professionals to create positive, effective, and collaborative learning experiences. Be a part of shaping a brighter future for your child. Visit www.bgs.edu to learn more about what a strength-based assessment could mean for your family. That's bgs.edu.
When I read those notes, when you hear that people literally from around the world, hearing your perspective has somehow impacted their lives in a positive way.
It feels really great. I feel like I'm just as much a part of the podcast as you are.
Well, you are. You're a huge part of the podcast. Not to mention, I wouldn't have created Tilt in the first place if it weren't for you. Welcome to the Tilt Parenting Podcast, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. I'm your host, Debbie Reber, and today is a different kind of episode than really any we've done before, and that's because today is the 1-year anniversary of Tilt. So rather than do an interview or tackle a big topic, Asher and I wanted to sit down and talk with you about what's happened with Tilt over the past year, share how it's impacted our relationship, give you some inside scoop into how we do things here at Tilt Central, and talk a little bit about what's happening in the coming year, including my sharing of a bit of big news for Tilt. We'll also take a little time to thank you for being a part of our audience. Before I cut to our conversation, though, we're really excited about the shows we have coming up, and I did want to share that I'm finally bringing my husband onto the show for an upcoming episode. Of course, I talk about Darren from time to time on the podcast, but we thought it would be valuable to have a conversation about the dynamic between the two of us, especially as Darren has definitely struggled more to adapt to the challenges that have come along with raising a differently wired kid. But it's also something that very few people open up about, so we are going to go there. And if you have specific questions that you want Darren and me to tackle in our conversation, feel free to email them to me at debbie@tiltparenting.com. And now I'm just going to get right to today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Asher.
Hello!
Happy anniversary.
Of what?
It's the 1-year anniversary of Tilt.
Oh, cool.
Can you believe we've been doing this for a year?
No.
So when we announced Tilt through that Facebook Live video, that was April 19th, 2016. We would never have guessed it was going to be received so well. And it has been viewed more than 27,000 times, that little video.
That's more than 250,000. No, 100,000. It doesn't really sound very fancy, does it?
Anyway, so since then, since that time 1 year ago, we have been continuing to try and spread the word, let people know that we're out there, and really just trying to connect with our audience, because what we found is that when people find us, especially when they find the podcast, they're usually happy because they feel like they found their people. So since today is our 1-year anniversary, well, it's not exactly today, but the day that this is airing, we thought we'd do something different and kind of take listeners behind the scenes of Tilt.
Cool.
So today we're going to be talking about what we've done in the past year. We're going to share with you some inside scoop about our process.
Yeah. So it will become an outside scoop after this.
That's very true. We're going to talk about how Tilt has affected Asher's and my relationship. And we're also going to let you know what's coming up in the coming year. Does that sound like a good plan to you, Ash?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think we should have more podcasts.
Okay. I do have time later in the show to ask what you want to see more of, so I'll make a note.
Ooh.
Podcast. So I thought we would actually start with feedback, and I just wanted to share with listeners, we have gotten so many incredible emails and notes and reviews on iTunes that honestly have really blown me away. And I wanted to just share an example of an email that we got. It said, I love the podcast. When I listened to the episode about school, I cried because it's exactly what we've been dealing with this year. I also love the phrase you use of differently wired kids. I've spent this school year, first grade, trying to explain to the school that there's nothing wrong with him and he doesn't need to be fixed. He needs acceptance and accommodation. And I felt very alone about it. So thank you for creating this website.
Yeah.
So when I read things like that, it's so awesome. I realize we really are having the impact that we envisioned, and it's super humbling, and it actually just fills me with so much gratitude that we've been able to do this.
Yeah, it does.
Well, you, Asher, your episodes in particular elicit really powerful responses in people. And I thought we would share a couple pieces of feedback that we've gotten, because I do hear from listeners a lot about the kids' POV specials. Well, the ones that you have surreptitiously renamed the Asher specials.
Yes, because they have me in them.
They do. And they're special.
Yay.
All right. So here are some examples of some things that we've heard about your specials, Asher. I'm so happy to have found this podcast. I've really struggled to find the right resources and support out there as I struggle at times, often, in this journey to raise my differently wired kiddo. And she is really loving the Asher episodes, which is wonderful to see. She has such a negative view of herself due to the ADHD and high-functioning autism, and it's been awesome for her to hear this bright and funny boy that she knows also struggles and is differently wired in some way like her. Thank you. Pretty cool, huh?
You're welcome.
Here's another one. I absolutely love Asher's POV as he's so expressive and in tune with who he is. His British accent is amazing.
Why, thank you.
So proud of what you're doing, and it means a lot to us. And here's one more I'll read, and then I'll move on.
It's smashing.
It is smashing. A quick note from Melbourne, Australia to say thank you both for the podcast. Just last week, we learned our 4-year-old son is a member of the Twice Exceptional community. It has been a really emotional time for my husband and I, and we've really enjoyed listening to your experiences and learning from them. In particular, hearing Asher's perspective has been invaluable. So I'm curious, Asher, how does that feel when I read those notes, when you hear that people literally from around the world, hearing your perspective has somehow impacted their lives in a positive way?
It feels really great. I feel like I'm just as much a part of the podcast as you are.
Well, you are. You're a huge part of the podcast. Not to mention, I wouldn't have created Tilt in the first place
Yes.
if it weren't
So
for
really,
you.
I should be getting all the money.
All the money.
If
That's
you raise
very
enough
funny.
money, I'll give some of it to Mom so she can make more podcasts.
That's very generous of you. You're a very funny kid, Asha.
I thank you.
How do you feel being a part of Tilt now? I mean, for lack of a better word, you are kind of like a spokesperson for differently wired kids everywhere. Are you
A spokes kid.
You're a spokes kid. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And also in general.
Does it feel like a big responsibility to you?
Not really that much. All I need to do is be the way I normally am.
And I just want to acknowledge, and I say this in most episodes, but you're very transparent and willing to talk about things. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have fun. We laugh.
There's ugly?
That's kind of a saying. But we do talk about all kinds of issues. I mean, just in this past year, we've talked about frustration and distraction and conflict and things that are not necessarily easy. And you've been just so open and honest about what it's like from your perspective. So I think what you're hearing from people is that they really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for doing that and for being willing to share your experience with people.
You're welcome.
And it feels okay for you to do that?
Yes, of course. Although sometimes I feel like what you said all writers feel like, which is, where do I get all this stuff from?
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, you said that all writers are sometimes like, I'm sometimes worried. How do I know if this book will be as good as the last one? How did I even write the last book? Where do I get the words?
Do you feel that way with the podcast?
Yes, kind of.
Oh, interesting.
I'm like, will I be as podcasty as last time?
I think if you just keep doing what you're doing and have conversations with me and share in the way you do, that totally works. Because you and I are kind of sharing everything so openly with our listeners, people are very curious about our relationship. And I'm curious, how do you feel about the kinds of things I share in the blog posts and cover in other episodes of the podcast, or the things I share through things like the Differently Wired Challenge? Like, do you ever feel like
I don't really read any of the blog posts, to be honest.
That's totally fine. You don't have
and I only listen to the Asher specials and those as I'm saying what.
Well, but you hear me recording other episodes or editing in here and you'll come in and listen.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like I share too much?
No.
Or does it ever make you uncomfortable that I'm so open about what's happening in our family?
No, of course not.
Okay. I just thought I would ask because I'm pretty transparent as well. And I'm fine kind of sharing all this stuff because I really believe that sharing helps other people realize that they're not in this alone.
Yeah.
Do you think that Tilt has had an impact on our relationship at all? Do you think it's brought us closer together?
Yeah.
You do?
Yes.
My next question, or do you think it's pushed us further apart?
No, most definitely not.
No. How do you think it's brought us closer together?
Well, now I have a thing that we do every 2 or 3 weeks, which is record a podcast.
And there's only a little bit of drama involved in that.
Yeah.
Mostly involving microphones.
Yeah.
Are you still enjoying doing the podcast with me?
Yeah, of course. I never stop.
Awesome. So, all right. Well, let's move on and talk about some things that we've done this year, and then we'll talk about what we have coming up. So I get a lot of emails from people with suggestions for things they would like to see in the future with Tilt. And the truth is I have so many big ideas for what I want to do with Tilt in the future and kind of have us grow into. And of course, there's only so many hours in a day. But today I thought we would talk a little bit about where we are right now and then what's coming in the next year and some of my big picture ideas. So right now, most of y'all know we are a very lean operation. I do most of the things on Tilt. I do the writing, the podcast production, the social media outreach, the website stuff. Asher, of course, is my sometimes co-host for the podcast.
Yay!
He also interviews people on occasion. We hope to do more of those in the coming year. He's also my tech assistant. So if I get stuck with something on the website, he's really good at troubleshooting and fixing things. And he's much faster.
Because I used to be working on a Divi website, but then I didn't finish it.
Right.
But I still know a lot about Divi.
You know Divi very well. And you can usually figure things out much quicker than me. And also, you're kind of my emotional partner in all of this. Like, you're always happy to talk about Tilt or listen to emails we've gotten, or if something exciting happens, I'm like, hey, Asher. And I really feel like you're my partner in all of this. And that's just really fun. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's great.
I've also just hired someone recently to help me on a super part-time basis in trying to get caught up with written versions of the podcast, because I know that a lot of our people who are coming to the Tilt website, they have auditory processing issues or they really prefer to read. And so I'm trying to get caught up on that as well.
Yeah.
And I know that listeners are curious about how we create the podcast. So I just wanted to break that down for people. So as an FYI, each episode of the podcast from start to finish, it takes me about 6 to 8 hours. And that includes...
Jeez.
I know, right?
That's much longer than I thought.
It's faster than it used to be. It used to be about 8 to 10 hours, but over the past year, and now this is episode 53, so I've had lots of practice. I'm getting more efficient. So when I talk about making the podcast, that includes interview prep. Then there's the actual interview itself. Then I edit a rough cut of the interview. Then I record an intro and outro. Then I have to edit it all together with the music. And then I write up show notes for every episode. So Yeah, so that is now about 6 to 8 hours. I was thinking if this is episode 53, that's over 400 hours of podcast production time in the past year. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And a little inside scoop for listeners. When I went to university, which was a very, very, very long time ago, my major was broadcast journalism. And as part of that degree, I learned how to edit video and audio. And I actually used to work at the on-campus radio station where I would edit my own little stories. But that was back in the day where I was like splicing tape together.
Really?
Yes, reel to reel.
Oh, geez. So if you wanted to insert an intro or outro, you'd have to get a bit of film and copy it a bunch of times and then tape it onto the front or back?
Yeah, pretty much.
That sounds awful.
It was very labor intensive. And I think it's really funny that that was like a specialty back then. And now you can probably edit better than I do. And anyone can who has an iPad or a computer.
And dedication.
And dedication. That's true.
It's usually the hardest part.
But I do have to say, I actually love editing and production. So for me, it really feels like I'm going back to my roots. And that has been one of the things that's been so fun about doing the podcast for me.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Oh, look at that. Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Also, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, many of you know I've been trying to raise money to cover some of those production aspects through Patreon. Yeah. So that has been slowly growing. I've just reached my initial goal, which is super exciting. And that should be enough to help me outsource some of the post-production tasks, which I need to do. Not because I don't enjoy the editing process, as I just said, I love that. But there is this little thing called time. And
yeah, it's really cool.
Between being a homeschool mama and running Tilt and then working on another big project, which I will tell you about in a few minutes, I'm finding myself spread a little thinner than I would like.
What's that mean? Spread thin.
Do you know that expression?
No.
Well, it's kind of like if you have a piece of bread and you just have a little bit of butter left and you're trying to cover the entire piece of bread. It's going to be spread very thin because there's only so much to go around.
Yeah.
And so I was applying that to my situation right now.
Yeah.
I'm spread thin because
there's only so much mom to go around.
Pretty much so. And I have some priorities in my life, you being one of them.
I thank you.
But the good news is I've just found someone I'm going to try out as a post-production editor to do that last bit of each episode of taking the rough cut and editing it together with the intro and the outro and the music and cleaning it up. So that's exciting. And eventually I would love to have a full-on editor who I could send the original recorded interviews to, and then they would just send back to me this beautifully edited episode ready for sharing. That's kind of like my big dream. So we'll see if we can get there in the next year.
Yeah.
Darren and I are prepping for a big move at the moment, so we are fully leaning into any and everything that simplifies things, and that absolutely includes mealtimes. At a time when my executive functioning skills are being pushed to the limit, even planning and executing dinner for our family these days can feel like a really big lift. That's why I'm especially grateful for Green Chef, a meal service that offers pre-measured and prepped ingredients to my door. Each box is packed with foods you can feel good about, like whole fruits and vegetables, plus lean protein and whole grain options. In fact, one of the things I love most about Green Chef is that they offer options that prioritize gut and brain health, with science-backed recipes that feature ingredients like fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3 fatty acids. During this time of lots of stress, it feels really grounding to know we're supporting ourselves nutritionally. I will take all the support I can get. And Green Chef doesn't just cover dinner recipes. I can add high-quality breakfasts, lunches, and snacks to my weekly box from Green Market. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Synbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Synbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon. And that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Synbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Synbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Synbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off.
I also just wanted to thank all the listeners out there for being a part of our audience and also let you know you're in very good company. In fact, this little podcast has been in the top 20 podcasts in the kids and family category on iTunes almost since we launched, which is amazing. And at the time we're recording this, we've had nearly 70,000 total plays. And our monthly downloads and plays have grown by over 2,000 just this month alone. So the great news is we are getting more and more listeners, which is really, it's just been so cool to see it grow.
Yeah, and we're high in the new and noteworthy.
We're still in new and noteworthy, which is surprising because we're not super new.
But we're very noteworthy, which compensates for this.
You think?
Yeah.
I'll take it though. It's very cool.
Yeah, so a new and not very noteworthy podcast could be a new and noteworthy, and a old but very noteworthy podcast could also be a new and noteworthy.
Got it. That's how it works, huh?
I'm pretty sure.
The challenge I see for us is that, again, this is episode 53, and since we're getting new listeners every week, we have so many great podcast episodes from the early days that people are not having, they're just not going to go back and say, oh, I'm going to start with number 1. I mean, some do, but most kind of pick up where they are now and then listen moving forward. So,
and then they say things like, you should make an episode about this. We did. It was episode 3.
Yeah, so that is something I want to try to figure out this year, is how to keep sharing those past episodes and make sure that people can easily find them and access them, because we have had incredible guests over the year. So those are some of the things I want to keep working on this year in relation to the podcast. Let's see, what else have we been up to? So last year we did one webinar on how to survive the holiday season, which I think was a success. It was fun. I really loved getting to interact with people in real time, since so much of the time it's just me talking into a microphone or through a blog post. So if you listeners out there have ideas or thoughts about things you'd like me to put a webinar together on, feel free to share them with me. I'm totally open to that. And then the most recent initiative is something we just announced last month, and that is our Differently Wired 7-Day Challenge.
Yay! It's a perpetual challenge, but it only takes 7 days.
That sounds like a bit of an oxymoron.
No, it's perpetual because it will always be 7 days no matter when you join.
That's right. You can join at any time. And if you listen to the podcast, I've been talking about it in every episode. But that is something I've been working on since the new year. And actually since last fall was when I first started thinking I really want to create this. But again, just so many hours in a day. So I'm excited that we finally got that up. And at the time I'm recording this, there are already more than 200 people who are going through it or have gone through the challenge, which is really awesome. And it's been fun because
I know that getting to engage on a more personal level is something a lot of members of the Tilt community are looking for. So that having a Facebook group for people who've done the challenge has been really cool as well.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been up to. But as I said earlier, I do have a little exciting announcement I wanted to make about what I'm working on right now and what will be coming up. And so that big project I mentioned earlier is that I'm working with a fantastic publisher on a book based on Tilt, and it's called Differently Wired.
It's amazing.
This is not news to you, Asher. You have been
Can it be dedicated to me?
I think I dedicated my last book to you, didn't I?
Yes, I know, but this one is about me.
That's true. I guess I shouldn't dedicate it to the cat then.
What?
You'll have to wait and see.
Oh.
But most of my listeners know I have been an author for almost 20 years and have written many books for girls primarily, self-help books for teen girls. But since shifting my focus to developing Tilt a few years ago, and well, really, Asher, since you were a little guy, I knew that I would be writing this book. I knew I wanted to write a book for parents who are raising atypical kiddos. So it's very exciting that I'm now getting the opportunity to do this. So I will share more details on the book over the coming months. I can say for now that it will be coming out in spring 2018, probably right around the 2-year anniversary of Tilt. So it's still a long ways off, which is actually a really good thing because I'm not done writing it yet. But the inside scoop is that it's going to be loosely based on the Tilt Manifesto. Ooh. And my hope is that it helps inspire parents and even more than that, just people everywhere to perceive and experience and embrace neurodiversity in a more positive and powerful way.
Yeah.
So that's the book. For the coming year on the podcast, I'm working hard to keep finding great guests to bring onto the show. And please know that I'm always interested in listeners' ideas for topics or guests. So if you have something you'd like us to cover, either on an Asher episode or a regular interview, you can email me at debbie@tiltparenting.com, or we have a podcast suggestion form on the website at tiltparenting.com/podcast. So I have also been busy putting together a dream list of guests, and I'm going to do my best to get as many of them on the show this year as well.
Great.
Ash, is there anything that you would like to see in the coming year for Tilt Parenting? Like anything special you'd like us to do or talk about?
No, not really. Just the usual.
You did say more podcasts. Do you want more Asher podcasts?
Yes.
Do you want to interview more people?
No, I just want more podcasts. I enjoy podcasting.
You do? What do you like about it the most?
Maybe we could do like double interviews or something where both of us.
Where we co-interview somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay, let's see if we can make that happen. Well, before we go, people are also often wanting to know how they can help us or be more involved in what we're doing. So I just wanted to take a minute to share what would be the most helpful right now. First, we know there are many parents out there with differently wired kids who don't know about us yet. I know, right? But part of the reason, and we've talked about this before, is that so many people, they're not open about what's happening, or they're keeping what's happening in the world or with their child's diagnosis a secret. And so as a result...
That's horrible.
Well, it is what it is. People have to go through this journey in their own way. But the challenge is that if you're going through something and no one knows that you're going through it, then they're not likely to recommend resources for you. So that's one of our challenges. Usually once people then find us at Tilt, they feel this instant sense of relief and connection, which is exactly what we want. That's why we created it. But it's making that first connection that can be challenging. So one thing that would be helpful for us would be if you, our listeners, would share our podcast episodes and our blog posts on your social media. Or if you're a part of a community or a group that's aimed at supporting parents like us, let them know what we're doing. I mean, that's actually how most people find us, through word of mouth and sharing person to person.
Yeah. So tell all your friends who have differently wired kids.
it's kind of almost, Asher, like we're a secret society, but we don't really want to be secret.
Yeah.
So yeah, listeners, we would love if you would help us to spread the word. That's an easy way to help us. Another thing to do is to help support the podcast. There are 2 ways that you can do that. One is to go to iTunes and leave us a rating or a review.
Preferably a high one.
We can't influence. People can leave whatever rating or review they want.
Yes, I know. If it's a bad review, then it's less important. Doesn't matter that much if you submit it.
Jeez, Asher.
But if it's a good review, then we need all the good reviews.
I usually ask listeners to do this at the end of every episode, so you might be tired of hearing me even mention it, so I apologize. But it really does make such a difference when it comes to helping people who are searching in podcasts on iTunes to help them find us. So if that's something you're up for doing, all you need to do is go to iTunes and click on ratings and reviews and give us a rating, 1 to 5 stars. And then, of course, if you're feeling especially inspired, you can write a few words about what you like about the show. That's one easy way to help us. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to be a sponsor of the show, you can do that by going to patreon.com/tiltparenting, and you can make a small monthly contribution. The cost of a tea or a coffee from Starbucks each month would actually make a huge difference to us, especially when we're trying to cover our production costs.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I would actually love your help with the Differently Wired book I just told you about.
Ooh. I'd love to help.
You would?
Yes.
Oh, you'll be helping. You're going to be one of my proofreaders. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. One way that people can help with the book is I'm looking to hear from parents who have stories and anecdotes to share about strategies that have helped to positively shift what's happening in their world with their kids. And I've actually put together a questionnaire for parents who want to share their anecdotes or tips for possible inclusion in the book. So if you've experienced powerful transformation in your world and how you relate to your child, or you've made a change in your family that helped move you through a rough patch, or you discovered the secret to helping your child feel emotionally regulated or connected or confident, I would love to hear from you about this so we can potentially share it with readers through the book. If you have something to share but you really want to protect your identity, that is not a problem. If I end up using your anecdote in the book, it would be up to you to decide whether I use your name or not. So that would be your call.
Yeah.
If you want to share your story or idea with us, please visit tiltparenting.com/book to find out more. So thanks in advance for helping us in this way. And I can't wait to hear from you. And because I am on a deadline with this project, all books come with deadlines, unfortunately, I'll be collecting anecdotes until May 10th. So if you have something to share, please check that out, tiltparenting.com/book, and share your story with me.
Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered, the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything, because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Hey, are you a parent of a teenager? Are you feeling overwhelmed about how to be what they need while also holding limits and boundaries that keep them safe? Are you tired of conversations that negate how messy this season of parenting is? Well, I've got you. My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Every week, I come to you with an interview digging into tough topics with experts I trust and solo shows that go deep into the personal growth and mindset needed to raise teens in a way that grows them into confident, capable young people. I am not afraid of getting real about the intersection of conscious parenting and the teen years, while also bringing in vulnerability, humor, and lightness. I'm walking the path with you and honored to serve. Listen to Joyful Courage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts.
And then I'm also putting together kind of a book team for Tilt. So a group of people I can reach out to periodically when I'm looking for feedback on things like the cover or the subtitle or other publishing milestones. And I will put together some extra bonuses for people who are part of the book team. So if that's something you're interested in, it would mean probably if you're on my newsletter list, you hear from me once a week. This would mean maybe one extra email every month or two. You can also do that at the tiltparenting.com/book link that I just mentioned. I think those are all the updates and news about Tilt. Did I miss anything, Asher?
No, I don't think so.
Well, before I go, I do just need to say a big thank you to you, the listeners and members of the Tilt community. Just speaking personally from my heart, creating Tilt and this podcast has, for me, it's honestly been the most fulfilling work I've ever embarked on in my life. And I've had some pretty amazing jobs in my lifetime, but this isn't a job to me. This is truly my joy place. I do work every evening late. I work every weekend, but I absolutely love every minute of it. I went and worked at a cafe for 5 hours yesterday, and I was just the happiest human.
Me too.
You were happy that I was not in the house and that I was out working?
No.
Oh.
I was happy.
Good.
Just in general, you know?
Well, it was a lovely sunny day in Amsterdam. It's hard not to be happy on a day like that. But for you listeners out there and members of the Tilt community, knowing that you're walking through this journey with me inspires me every single day. And I never feel alone in my parenting journey because I know that you're there. And I just think that's amazing. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you for being there and for being a part of my world. I literally have regular gratitude attacks because of you. So thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we go, Asher?
Well, I'd like to thank the audience also.
Yeah?
Yes. For its dedication and not minding when I say viewers instead of listeners.
They're very forgiving, aren't they?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Asher, for joining me for this. And thank you, listeners, for celebrating our 1-year anniversary with us. This is so exciting, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the coming year. Thanks so much. You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. For the show notes for this episode, visit tiltparenting.com/session53. To share your story with me for possible inclusion in the Differently Wired book, or to sign up to be a part of the Differently Wired book team, go to tiltparenting.com/book. To support our podcast through Patreon, visit patreon.com/tiltparenting. And if you'd like to join more than 200 other people and participate in the Differently Wired 7-Day Challenge, please visit us at tiltparenting.com/7day to find out more and get signed up. Thanks again for listening. For more information on Tilt Parenting, visit www.tiltparenting.com.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.